So today, I wanted to introduce this tool that I built a number of years back, back in 2016, so almost 7 years ago. I was making lots of custom products using trigonometry formulas, so triangulating functions to get a point for either a polyline or something in a product parametrically that used limited input. So with trigonometry, if you have a right triangle and say I have a point over here, I know the angle and maybe the opposite, I can get different values that I don't have otherwise. So in this case, if I have the angle and opposite, I could get, for example, the hypotenuse, which would be this length here. Or maybe I have the hypotenuse and the angle, and I need my opposite and adjacent to get my XY coordinates to get to that point, which is the example we're going to show you in this point. And Microvellum has a trig calculator, but it really only gives you values. And what I was looking for was something that I could use to create functions and formulas that I could put into my products. So I'm going to show you how I use this in an example, and I will provide a download link for this file. I also have a live Google Sheet link that people have used over the years to create this product. So what I've actually got here is a product that creates a triangle, and I've just taken a single part product, and put some prompts in it. So one I put in was the hypotenuse and the angle. So I can put it in an angle and the hypotenuse, and it parametrically makes a triangle from it by putting a route across here. For example, let me copy this where you can see what I'm talking about over here. So this is the part. Ignore this outline, that's just the product outline. But for example, if I wanted to say a triangle with a hypotenuse, which is this long edge, maybe I wanted that to be 30 inches. And the angle to be 30 degrees, it is going to give me that. So if I dimension this should come out to exactly 30 inches here. And this angle is 30 degrees. But if you can imagine, what I need to make that route correct is I actually need these 2 points, and in reality I'm doing it with a lead in and lead out, so I need some other points. As you can see here, imagine this is the P-line route, and I can, let me actually show that. If I draw this part in 2D, what we're actually getting is a part with this route that has 4 points. So we have the start of the lead in, the start on the part, the end on the part, and the end of the lead out. So that's actually 4 points that we need. So if we were to start from scratch to create this, how might we do that? So let me draw part. Just put a product here, and let's start from scratch. So for starters, I'm going to add 2 prompts to this product. Up here at the top, I'm going to right click, insert prompt. I'm going to call this triangle hypotenuse for the length. Let's just go ahead and put 20 in there, and this is going to be a type 1 prompt, which is a text entry. Enter the length, hypotenuse length of your triangle. And then I need a second prompt. I'm going to call this the angle. Let's start with 30. Again, a type 1 prompt. Enter the angle of your triangle. And then we need to define these names. So I'm going to select both, and you can actually do them at the same time, but I'm going to right click, define name. And it told me triangle, hypotenuse, angle, both were added as defined names. So now these are both prompts that I can use. All right. So, but how do we get the formulas that I'm looking for. So what do we ultimately need? I need to first calculate these points, these individual points. So again, if we go back to this guy as an example, so let me put in what we've started with here. We had a hypotenuse of 20 and an angle of 30. So let's do that. And then let's modify, draw part in 2D. All right. So if you imagine, we need to get this 17.3205. We have the hypotenuse of 20, also known as triangle hypotenuse is the variable name. And then we have the angle. So if we come to our calculator, we put in the angle. I'm going to put in, right now it's 30, but I also want to put in the prompt, which is angle. And then we have our hypotenuse, which is triangle. I'm going to put it in exactly as we defined it. So I need underscore hypotenuse, and that is 20. So you see what it does is it gives me two values. One, these pop up because these are the only other values that I can get from the information I put in. I put in angle and hypotenuse. So this column I have angle and hypotenuse. Apologize for my dog in the background. And all right, so I want to get this guy. So my angle is here, my hypotenuse is here. So this is what's known as adjacent. And this is our opposite. This side is adjacent to the angle, and this side is opposite to the angle. So you see that here. I want to get adjacent. I have the angle and hypotenuse. I want this guy. So how do we get that? Well, here, if I want adjacent, I could use this formula. So I've already put in here all what I need to where I can copy this. It's giving me 17.3205. So I'm using the values to double check that it's going to give me the right value. And then, okay, here's the formula that I want to copy into Microvellum. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go back here into the product we're making, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to go down to one. Let's paste this just over here so we can see what it evaluates as. So we get 17.3205. So we've got a nice little function here, but I need more than just that value. So what I want, and the way I like to build these, I like to use the polyline machining token, P-line, and you need a list of vectors for each point. We're going to have 4. And in Microvellum, you hit F2, and we go here. We can see that there's a function called vectors, which allows you to concatenate a list of vectors together. And within that, we can actually use something that's called a point function, which just allows you to put in your x, your y, and your z. So these are pretty straightforward functions that I like to break out into prompts down here, invisible prompts, just so that they're like variables I can reference. So I will do my first one, point, let's call it point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. Now these correspond to the each of the 4 points that we need: the start of the lead in, the end of the lead in, the end of the line, and the start of the end of the lead out. If we start, let's start with the easy one, which is actually point 2 here. Get this point here. We have what would be the x, and then we need the y, which would be our opposite. So we go back. And again, remember we have our x. This is our x. We need our y and z for the first point. 3 various parts of the vector, x, y, z. The z is pretty easy. It's the thickness of the material. I won't bore you guys with that. But we'll just use our height function, which here is the thickness of the part. So I will say that's going to be equals height, put your z. So this will be our x, our y. Let's see, I'm just placing them here to show the process. So we need our y. Our y, as we looked at here, is going to be our opposite. So if I go back to the calculator, now I need our opposite, which is 10. We can check that. we get 10. And actually, I'm confusing you guys a little bit. This point is actually going to be an x of 17.3205, and then y will be 0. And our second point will have a y of 10 and an x of 0. But anyways, we'll go ahead and I'll copy this formula and we'll paste it in here. Gives us 10. So we're going to have a 0, 0. We'll keep the z's the same. All right. So the function is pretty simple. I'm going to copy what I've got here, and it's equals PNT, and then you put your x, comma, your y, comma, and then your z. And it gives it to you in a vector format, a point format. So we've got x, y, z separated by semicolons, and we'll do the same for point 2 equals PNT, x is 0, and then y, I will give you this. Let's put this here real quick. I need to copy my formula for my y. And I'm going to come back in here, F2, and I'm going to put that here as my y. The only difference now between our point 1 and point 2 with the lead ins and lead out is we want to extend by our lead out. So in this case, we have a variable in almost every library now in Microvellum. It's called G router lead. And I'm going to show you, it's in this library I'm in, it's set at 0.75. So that is a variable that we can use. But we need the X and Y offset from here. So we already have this point. So we need to know how much further in X and Y it is to this, which is a function of 0.75. So we need to get these values using trigonometry. So again, my angle's the same. I have 30 degrees. Now, if we go back here, instead of the hypotenuse being the hypotenuse, triangle hypotenuse, it is a variable called G router lead. And if I go back to our workbook just to show you, equals G router lead. This is a variable that comes up and evaluates to 0.75. So what we want is our X and our Y from that. So our X is going to be our adjacent again. So now I'm getting 6.6495, as you see, is what it evaluates to here. So we're getting the right value, and I just want that formula. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add this to what we already did before. So in here, I'm going to add it to the X. So we had 17.3205, which got us to here. And then we need plus 0.6495. So I am going to just come in here, F2, to edit this. And I can actually go highlight the PNT and hit FX. And so I just want to add that function that I just got from my calculator. And you'll see it gives me 17.97 here for the X. I also need to change my Y by that lead in. So that is going to be my opposite, which is 0.375. So I'm going to copy that function. And I'm going to put it here. In this spot, I don't actually need the equals. And I get 0.375. Let's get rid of those extra spaces. All right, so now I need to do the inverse of that on my 0.4. I need to add those same amounts here. So I need to go negative in X by the same 0.6495, and I need to go additionally in Y 10 plus the 0.375. So I copied my vectors before here, and I should be able to just take what's in my calculator. So let's start with X. X is easy. We've got our 0.6495. Actually, I want this to be negative. And then we need to add on to this our y. Get rid of that equal sign and the extra spaces. All right. 10.375. So now what do? We have these points. Let's get rid of this extra noise over here. First, let's define these. So I'm going to select, right click, define name. Now I have 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 as a function. So I'm actually going to save and close, and I'm going to go into this through my part properties now to add the machining token. So what we want to do is we want to add a polyline that's going to route those points. So I've got my panel, my part. I'm going to go here to add machining token. And let's go to our polyline. And so now we need to add our vector locations. And as I mentioned before, I can actually come into our formula editor, go to our function list. Under miscellaneous, I've got vectors. And now I can just reference those variables that I created. So PNT1, PNT2, PNT3, PNT4. And those are each of our vectors, which once I hit insert, I think I need to put an equal sign here. And now I've got our vector list here. The only other things, I've picked a tool. I need to set tool compensation, which I'm going to set to left. Let's see what we get. Ah, interesting. We got a funky shape here. Let's see what we got going on. Oh, so this lead in here, I've got something wrong with my Y. So I think I made a mistake in that. Let's see if we can fix that. Go back in here. I probably added instead of subtracted that Y, but now that we have this defined, it's very easy. I know that's 0.1. Yep, I went positive 0.375 instead of negative. So that's easy enough. Select PNT FX. And let me put a negative here. And there we go. Now we have that triangle part. And again, if we go back here to prompts, I've got my hypotenuse. So now I could change it to 25 and see it grew. All right. I will link to this file where you can download it and use it for yourself. And I hope you found this useful. And if you have any questions on this, leave a comment. And I hope you learned something.